Okay, so I think today we're going to dive right back into questions that we get from doctors who are interested in building their own digital programs, but are nervous about what exactly that means and if patients are still going to get the same results, the same care, and still have those permanent changes that we expect from vision therapy at this point. And before we had digital programs, we were very committed to a patient needs to come in once a week. We need to be able to get our hands on them, see how they respond to this lens, see how they respond to this prism, because we know they're not going to practice at home.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's a given.
We need to do our work. We need that full half an hour, 45 minutes to do all the work ourselves because they're not going to do it anyway, right? Mm-hmm. So after we started doing our digital programs, and like we said, they were just for our wait list, we saw that patients were actually practicing, which was funny.
Amazing.
And actually making changes quicker than we were seeing in the office. Mm-hmm. And so at one point we stopped having, the normal OMD, CI, AI kiddo come into the office until after they did the 12-week program, because it was kind of like, well, that program might take away everything anyway. And so, but when we think about the neuroplasticity of it, how does that even work? Like, how is that happening? And what did you see, I guess?
So, of course, neuroplasticity is what vision therapy is all about, right? It's about retraining the brain to reorganize how you see and experience the world. And so what we were trying to do with our in-office patients was trying in a very short amount of time to get our hands on them and make those changes ourselves and really guide them so that we could be right there to make sure that they are doing it the right way. And then when we went to our digital program and found that we could be in the patient's homes with them, actually explaining to the parent why we're doing something, how to do it, how to make it easier, how to make it harder. It was like having our hands on them 7 days a week, because they didn't need to be here to get that same sort of outpouring. So, and then to also make the changes, they had to be able to do it over and over and over again. And they could do that a lot faster than only coming in once a week and maybe having some practice then in between.
And I think that that's really what it boils down to, because all of the science of neuroplasticity shows that there needs to be that daily repetition. That's how the brain is learning the new skills. That's how it's going to keep happening. And so, yes, in the office, we can make changes. And for the patients who would go home and practice, that was great. But for the patients that weren't going to go home and practice, while we thought our digital programs would not work for them, they actually worked better for them, because they actually were practicing every day, and they actually understood why they were practicing, and it kind of tapped into a whole different area of how they were processing the information in the first place. And then they understood why they were doing it, and they could sense that, okay, well, yesterday this activity was hard for me, and today let's try this other activity that's also on my list of things to do this week. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do this activity that was hard a little bit different, because I understand why I'm doing it.
Exactly.
As opposed to being assigned these exercises that kind of they make sense in our heads, but they seem a bit haphazard to the patients. And so the reason why the digital programs are actually causing commensurate results, or sometimes even better results than in office, is because it's really tapping into that neuroplasticity of the brain. And that's the science of everything we do anyway.
Ding, ding.
Okay, so next question here. How much of vision therapy already happens outside of the office? So a lot of people that we speak to say, oh yes, I have them practicing this computerized program, or I send them home with worksheets, or I send them home with a list of exercises that I want them to practice. And isn't that the same thing as having a digital program? And why would I invest in creating a digital program, both my time, energy, and everything, and when I could just use a computerized program that already exists?
It's a very good question. And those are tools. What you are creating is not a tool. What we created are not tools. They utilize tools sometimes, but they are not tools themselves. What they are is a distillation of your clinical thought and clinical reasoning. Now, there are some benefits to those digital tools. We've seen that, some people, especially when they're in maintenance, they do really great with, an HTS. Those patients who, there's research coming out about some of the amblyopia and, the kind of new digital resources for amblyopia and myopia control, all that kind of stuff. And those are just tools that sometimes patients will do and sometimes they won't. And it kind of comes back to what Dr. Collier was talking about. Do they actually understand why they're doing it? Oh, to resolve my amblyopia, but what does that mean? Mm-hmm. Like why does it matter? Still got one good eye. But with your digital programs that are actually, taking your in-office therapy and bringing it home, a patient and their family actually understands what we're actually trying to accomplish and what that impacts in their life. And so it increases their whole buy-in and therefore their compliance and therefore their success.
But it could be argued that then, don't we already explain it to the parents pretty well? Like, we explain it well enough for them to sign up in the first place. And so they must be semi-bought in already and they semi-understand. And so maybe we just need to explain it better in the office.
Sure. Once. And then you throw a lot of words out at them. And then they go home and their spouse says, so what happened? What does this mean? It's good for them. It'll help. They're going to see, And I think, how often do we have those parents go home and then their spouse calls up and is like, wait, so I just sent my husband, but I don't understand what he's talking about. He doesn't remember. He said you said it better.
Exactly.
And that's a big thing.
And that's not just after the exam. It's
right.
just that after the exam, they need to make a decision. Mm-hmm. So that's when they're actually going to hopefully maybe seek out the information. But when it comes to practicing and like the babysitter is picking them up from vision therapy, is that really going to get translated? And yes, you can have worksheets that explain how to do the things, mm-hmm. but that's very different than that explanation coming from you. Yes. And that's really kind of the difference there, because even with the computerized exercises, some of our doctors do use computerized exercises in their digital programs. Mm-hmm. Because they find that it's like very necessary to be able to, still incorporate that binocularity and being able to use vectograms and vectographs and all of those things. However, they're using it in conjunction with their in-office without having them in the office. And that's the big key there.
Ding, ding.
And so then next question, or did we leave anything out of that one?
I think we got it.
Okay, next question. So what's the difference between an exercise app and a clinical program?
All about the theory, baby. It's all your clinical reasoning, right? And so an app can do some really cool things. An app can adjust and can, change the experience of the user as they use it. And it also doesn't, give you any of that free space, real life, kind of stuff that we're always talking about in behavioral optometry and vision therapy, like, how important it is to interact with real life and actually move through space and actually manipulate objects and, that kind of thing. So I think that, those kinds of tools can do a lot of good, but they're not going to give you the full actual experience of vision therapy. And therefore you're going to be missing out on a whole lot.
And then, that kind of also circle back to the tool versus mm-hmm. methodology conversation, because we all use Brock strengths in our practices. And when
probably
other people,
pretty standard.
Exactly. And when other professions use Brock strengths in their practice, same tool, very different results. And I think that we've all seen things go very, very wrong from a Brock string used the wrong way. Right. And so that's somebody who's trained in something. They're trained to look at the visual system a certain way. Mm-hmm. And they're doing what they think is the appropriate treatment. And that tool is now negatively impacting the patient. So when we're thinking about how tools are used and how that information is being conveyed to the person and how that tool is being introduced to the person and what the impacts of that tool will be on that person, having that information come from you is going to be much better than having that information come from somebody who's trained in a different field, better than information that is received by a parent the last 5 minutes of the session, better than information received from somebody picking the child up and then being practiced by somebody else, better than a worksheet ever could explain. Because when you're explaining it, that takes away all of the guesswork. Mm-hmm. There's no confusion as to when to use this tool. There's no confusion as to how to use this tool. There's no confusion as to what to do when this tool isn't happening, where the results of this tool and what they're expecting to see isn't happening the way that we're expecting to see it, because you've seen it all already and you're putting it all out there so they have it. And if we're being honest, some of our therapists are better than others. It's just, and some can communicate a lot better than other people. And some people like to receive their information from this type of therapist versus this type of therapist even if they're equally trained. But your patients want to receive things from you. That's where they're coming to you. They're not coming to you because of your therapist. They're coming to you because of you. And so if you're trying to explain it to them,
I get it.
Then that's going to be impactful, because there are doctors who practice very differently than me. And there are patients who prefer that type of doctor. And there are patients who prefer me. And so those patients should be spoken to by that doctor. And obviously that's not realistic in most situations.
Not all the time. Yeah. Every time.
Not most of the time. Because I'm seeing so many patients that I don't have time to explain to you how to do Grafman tracings and why. Ever. There's not a time that I have time to explain that, except when we're talking about it in our digital program.
And you can record it once and then use it again and again and again and again.
Exactly. So I've explained it once, and now it's like I've essentially explained it thousands of times. Mm-hmm. The same exact way. The way that I meant to explain it, not the way that I explained it between 5 different patients and people asking me questions.
Right.
There you go.
With as many takes as it takes.
As many takes as it takes. Yeah, very true. Okay, so another question is, okay, so yes, we have the people who might be a good fit for the program, and we've explained it properly. The science is working. The patient goes home, they do it, and they don't get better. Mm-hmm. Why would that happen?
Well, the same reason it wouldn't happen if they're coming into the office and they are doing it, but they're not doing it, right? I think there's definitely people who say they did vision therapy and it didn't work. And then when you ask a little deeper, okay, well, how often are you doing your exercises? How often, did you actually change what you were working on? How long are you doing it? How hard did you push it? If it was too hard already, did you find ways to make it easier? If it was too easy already, did you have ways to make it harder? Are there, there's so many different factors into why something does or doesn't work. And I think it's basically kind of comes down to the same thing as when you have your in-office patient who you see every week and they come in 6 weeks later, 12 weeks later, and they say, my symptoms haven't changed, nothing's changed at all. And you find out that they canceled last minute 3 weeks in a row and they were in Aruba and they didn't practice. And then they went home and, but I forgot my Brock string. And then they were like, well, I looked at the chart, fix it. Right. So it's like, okay. And so you're going to run into that with people who are going to do the digital therapy. But I also find that, there's a little bit of a heart, that I didn't spend an hour with this person in person every week, begging them to do something more, begging them to practice, or they come in and they've made no progress and, so we've got to just start from square one again. Or I could say, okay, so you can go back to your digital program and revisit that module, please. do it.
And I think that that goes to, you know, with what Jessica is saying, and I think this is where we'll wrap it up. But that goes through to your therapist's engagement or enjoyment of their career.
There's that
And
too.
so, you know, when they're feeling like they're just repeating themselves endlessly and nobody's listening to them, that's not rewarding. So catch us next time. Let's get building.